Hi everyone, this is Dr. Wilborn. I wanted to help you get prepared for our test coming up on Thursday for the Middle Ages and Renaissance. I'd like to go through the study guide with you since we have only had one class. So if you would follow through with me, I would like to help you make sure you have the right answers. Number one, during the Middle Ages, where was the center of musical life? We know it was in the church. The 5 parts of the Renaissance Mass are, we have an acronym for them. That is King George can see angels. The Kyrie would be the K. King George, the G, would be the Gloria. Can is the Credo. C would be the Sanctus. And then angels would be the Agnus Dei. It looks like Agnes, but we pronounce it Agnus. Number 3, Renaissance instrumental music was intended for what purpose? Well, it was not something that we found in the church. Instrumental music was very much outside of the church, and the main intent for this was for dancing. It was for entertainment. Number 4, during the blank blank, composers emphasized the use of syncopation. Well, syncopation is an advanced rhythmic technique that is an offbeat feel. And so this was something that was new. And we know that during our discussion, we talked about the ars antiqua, which antique would be old. This would be the ars nova. It is the new, where syncopation is an offbeat pattern. Number 5, the priests in the Middle Ages served multiple purposes. What were they? Well, obviously, a Catholic priest would be responsible for going through the service on each Sabbath or each time they had a church service, but also they were considered to be musicians. And from our experience, we know that a lot of people are unable to sing, and so I find it humorous that they were also required to be singers. Then, number 6, the Council of Trent met to accomplish what primary purposes? Well, there was a big discussion about problems within the Catholic Church, and one of the problems they had was the music. The music was considered to be impure. It was too worldly. It had content that they felt was not holy and appropriate for a church service, and so their purposes were primarily to purify the Catholic Church music. Where was the leading center of music, or the music center, in the 1500s? It is Italy. Italy became a leading music center during the 16th century. The 16th century would be the 1500s. Dates for that was 1450 to 1600. Number 9, notated secular songs were sung by French nobility, and there were 2 groups. There were the trouvères and the troubadours. Well, the troubadours had less prestige and less money. The trouvères were the ones who were very wealthy. The wandering minstrels or jongleurs of the Middle Ages actually performed music and did acrobats in places like castles and taverns, town squares, and they even played on instruments like harps and fiddles and lutes. And they were considered to live on the lowest level of society. So number 10, the Middle Ages jongleurs played instrumental dances and were the lowest echelon of society. That is true. Number 11, 16th century Venice, or Venetian school, was primarily composed of 3 main composers. Now, 2 of these guys had the same last name: Andrea Gabrieli, Adrian Willaert, or Willaert, as most people pronounce him, and the other brother, Giovanni Gabrieli. Number 12, what is the texture of Gregorian chant? Well, as we remember, Pope Gregory I had a 14-year reign as the head of the Catholic Church, and they began to sing music, and they were chants, and they were known as monophonic, mono meaning one, and so these were very much like children singing in unison. There was no harmony. Number 13, what is word painting? It was designed to represent specific poetic images. 14, the texture of Renaissance music is primarily. Well, we just said that the content and the texture of the Gregorian chant was monophonic, but during the Renaissance, it became polyphonic. Poly meaning many. And so what we see are several voices singing different songs going at the same time, but they seem to beautifully work together. So poly means many, and so we have polyphonic voices. Number 15, when was the golden age of a cappella music? Well, we know that a cappella is music that has no Instrumental accompaniment, it is strictly singing, and it is the Renaissance. The Renaissance is the golden age of a cappella music. 16. The Renaissance madrigal. It's a particular type of music. It's about what subject and for what voices. Well, the Renaissance madrigal is really a love song, and it can have several voices. Madrigals are quite fun to sing, they're energetic, and they're secular in nature. Number 17, organum, was comprised of Gregorian chant and included 8 or more melodic lines. Well, we know that's false. Organum is a term that we apply to medieval music that has Gregorian chant, plus it can have one more voice, 2 more voices, 3 more, or 4 more. We have more than one melody, if you will, going at a time. Our harmony is created by singing at least 2 melodies or melodic lines at the same time. Number 17, we know that it doesn't have to have 8, but it does have to have at least 2. Number 18, medieval blank were the primary singers of Gregorian chant. Could have been priests, but they also could have been medieval monks, had devoted their lives to be church men. Number 19, the church blank were the basic music scales. Well, they were known as the church modes, M-O-D-E-S, and there were 8 different scales. 20, Renaissance music shifted from the church to where? To the court. Now let's be clear about the court. The court was not a court of law, but was nobility. These were the people with the money. And to have concerts in their halls, in their homes, on their property, and because they had the money, they could hire the musicians. Number 21, the Catholic Church was or was not more powerful in the Renaissance than during the Middle Ages. Well, they were not more powerful. 22, education was unimportant to aristocrats and the upper middle class. Well, that is false, because education was actually considered to be a status symbol by the aristocrats and the upper middle class. 23, every educated person was expected to be trained in what? Music performance and in music reading. 24, what was secular humanism? It's an intellectual movement, and the movement still exists today, and it focused on human life and human life accomplishments. 25, the earliest known composers to write music with measured rhythm were 2 people, but the 2 people who did this were Leonin and Perotin. 26, what was the center of polyphonic music in Europe after 1150? Well, it went to Paris, or Paris, as some people call it. 27, an estampie was a type of medieval dance. I think of stamping my foot to an estampie. 28, the focal point of music in Venice was at what famous church? It was St. Mark's. If you look from an aerial view, top down, it is in the shape of a cross, and on the left side of the cross there is an area for a choir loft, and on the right side there is another choir loft, and they would sing antiphonally, anti-voice, or back and forth. This church became very famous for that, and the Gabriellis were 2 of the people who made that happen. Number 30, in the Renaissance, much of the instrumental music composed during the Renaissance was intended for church use. Well, let's think about that for a minute. Renaissance was the golden age of a cappella music, and the church really did not use instrumentation. So number 30 is actually false. 31, secular vocal music. Remember, secular is the opposite of sacred. Secular is anything that is non-religious. Sacred is something that is religious. Secular vocal music allowed instrumental accompaniment. Yes. Secular music used all instrumentation. 32. Secular dance music published during the 16th century still remains today. True. It contains a lot of rapid changes of mood, more so than the sacred music. And there is a whole wealth of dance music that we have from the 16th century that has survived. 33. What is the pear-shaped instrument that became popular in the Renaissance? It's called the lute, L-U-T-E. It looks like a fat-bottomed guitar. 34. The 2 main forms of sacred Renaissance music are the Mass and the motet, M-O-T-E-T. Who is credited for having created Gregorian chant? Pope Gregory I. Number 36. A blank motet was written for 2 or more choirs. Well, this happened in St. Mark's. We talked about the choir lofts where there are 2, and we know that poly means many. So this is polychoral, C-H-O-R-A-L, many choirs. 37. Knowledge about our instruments used in church comes from where? Well, today what we have comes primarily from pictures of literary descriptions. 38. Was most medieval music vocal, or was most medieval music instrumental? Well, it was vocal. 39. The term Ars Nova, remember Ars Nova being the new music, became during what century? It was during the 14th century, during the 1300s. Number 40. Middle Ages music occurred between the years of blank and blank. Well, the Middle Ages was 1,000 years, 450 to 1450. Number 41. Choral music without accompaniment is called the letter A, cappella music. 42. Women were not allowed to sing where? Well, they couldn't sing in the church. And where did they sing? They sang music in convents, where they actually received musical training. 43. Sacred vocal music contains more rapid shifts of mood than secular music. It's false. Sacred music was quieter and less ornate. It didn't have as many moods. 44. Renaissance music clearly marks tempos and dynamics. That's false. Renaissance music did not indicate the tempos and the dynamics, or even the instruments, or the number of singers on a part. Number 45. Secular music and dance music thrived outside where? The church.